while you were asleep, we simply took you to our little corner of heaven. Welcome to Madagascar.
Madagascar?
What?
No, not hoo-ha, Aska.
Marty, it's just like my mural back at the zoo.
Oh, nah, fellow. That is the real deal right there.
Look at that, that's not a bad view.
I mean, that's the thing that you were always looking at, but it's actually there. I mean, that's like the real version of...
This is Madagascar. Now, the interesting thing is, the name Madagascar doesn't originate any place on the island. Instead, it arises out of the European tradition. Marco Polo named the place Madagascar in part because he had it confused with the Somalian port Mogadishu. He corrupted the name a little bit and got things a little confused. The story of Madagascar actually goes back to the prehistoric breakup of Gondwanaland, the supercontinent. Imagine, if you will, that the Earth is an apple, and the continents floating on the surface of the Earth are basically the thickness of the skin of the apple. At one time, all of those continents had collided together and produced Pangaea, a single continent, and that produced a great deal of heat, and that heat eventually broke Pangaea in two. The southern portion of Pangaea became Gondwanaland, and that's what you're looking at here. Gondwanaland included Madagascar, India, Africa, Antarctica, Australia, South America, and the Arabian Peninsula. But at 135 million years ago, Gondwanaland began to break apart. You can see clearly that in the upper right, Saudi Arabia is moving away and the Red Sea is forming, and in the lower left, South America is slipping away from Africa. In the lower right, Madagascar, India, Australia, and Antarctica are all slipping away. At 88 million years ago, Madagascar separated from India and therefore separated itself from the rest of the world. It's in isolation after that, but there are dinosaurs still on Madagascar. From here on, Madagascar is isolated from the rest of the world, and the result is that Madagascar has over 80% of its plant and animal species found no place else on Earth. Now that India has broken away from Australia and Antarctica, it's going to be propelling itself north, and it smashes into Asia, creating the Himalaya Mountains. The Himalayas are important to Madagascar because that's what creates the monsoon. Northern parts of Madagascar are affected by the monsoon, and they get as much as 12 feet of rain a year. Very few of the animals that are on Madagascar today survived the age of the dinosaurs, but one of them that did is the chameleon. The chameleon seems to have originated in Madagascar, and virtually all species of chameleon are on Madagascar. There are only a couple of species of chameleon that are in Africa. At about 60 million years ago, the lemurs made it into Madagascar. Now, this was a period of time when lemurs were common in both Asia and in Africa, and the lemurs must have made it to Madagascar on a raft of some kind. At 60 million years ago, there were no monkeys in Africa or Asia, but at about 50 million years ago, monkeys were developed, and they supplanted the lemurs in Africa and Asia. But monkeys never made it to Madagascar, and the lemurs there never had to compete with them. As a result, you still have lemurs in Madagascar, but nowhere else. Once the lemurs got to Madagascar, they began diversifying all throughout the island. The island has a number of different ecological niches caused by different types of terrain and weather. Notice, for example, that there is a light tan spine that runs from the northern tip of Madagascar down to the south. That divides the eastern two-thirds of the country from the west. And that is important because that affects the rainfall. Also note that from the northern tip down to the southern tip is about 1,000 miles. Madagascar is about the size of Texas, and that means that there's lots of room for many different ecological niches. The monsoon rains pour a great deal of water on the north and the east, but the chain of mountains creates a shadow, a rain shadow, and so that the west and the south tend to be extremely dry. The result is now there are over 100 different kinds of lemur to fill all those ecological niches. The first people arrived in Madagascar at about the time that Rome was a power in the Mediterranean, and they arrived in outrigger canoes from Borneo. We know that from the appearance of the people, the cultural practices, the agricultural methods, the veneration of ancestors, the prevalence of a vahila, which is a bamboo tube zither of East Asian origin, and other reasons as well. Bantu-speaking people from Africa did not enter Madagascar until about 1000 AD, and in the 1500s, Europeans started making their way to Madagascar. In 1896, Madagascar became a French colony. We're going to be entering at the center of the country, the capital, Antananarivo. Antananarivo sits at the heart of the old Merina tribal kingdom, and in many ways it sets the tone for all of Madagascar, although Madagascar is somewhat diverse. From this tree is where the king used to make his proclamations. It's a few miles away from the capital itself at what became the Summer Palace. At first the family consolidated its hold on the center of the island through marriage, but then after that it consolidated its hold on most of the rest of the island by use of French and British guns and equipment. At the center of the capital today, there's a sign, Antananarivo, on the side of a hill. It reminds you a great deal of the sign in Hollywood. But above that sign is the Queen's Palace. The last royal monarch of Madagascar was a queen, and she was hostile to the Christians. There's a church there to the right of the palace, and at that church she used to throw Christians off a cliff to their death. I'm getting ready to leave the capital now, but before I go I'd like to take you by a restaurant where they're going to be having a performance. This performance includes a traditional musical instrument called the vali or valiha. This instrument originated in Southeast Asia. It's made out of bamboo. Today the strings are made out of metal. It has a brilliant sound like a harpsichord, not a mellow sound like a piano or a guitar. The original name for this instrument in Southeast Asia is a vadaya. The tune that they're playing is apparently a traditional Malagasy tune.